Good afternoon, YouTube. This is Truth Be Told with Don V, broadcasting out of sunny skies in Arizona. We have a couple stories we'd like to share with you and see what you think. First one says majority of House Republicans who voted to impeach 45 will face America's first primary challenges. 9 out of 10 House Republicans who voted to impeach former number 45 over the incident in the U.S. Capitol on January 6th are facing primary challenges from America's first candidates. Representative Liz Cheney, Republican of Wyoming, Tom Rice, Republican of South Carolina, Jamie Herrera Butler, Republican of Washington, Adam Kitzer, Republican of Illinois, Dan Newhouse, Anthony Gonzalez, Fred Upton, Peter Meiser, and David Vallejo are all expecting primary challenges from Republicans. Sorry, you hear Callie, that's my little kitty cat. She's unhappy about something. All right, Trump vows to work against those Republicans as they run for re-election in 2022 and has already endorsed one primary challenger and signaled there are more to come, Fox News reported. Instead of attacking me and, more importantly, the voters of our movement, top establishment Republicans in Washington should be spending their energy in opposing Biden, Pelosi, Schumer, and the Democrats, 45 said in his February CPAC speech. Get rid of them all, he said, of the Republicans who voted to impeach him, the outlet wrote. Representative John Cato is the only Republican who has yet to encounter American First challenger, despite his support for impeachment in May. Cato collaborated with House Speaker Pelosi to create a commission to investigate the January 6th incidents. In the end, the commission failed in the Senate. The Republican Party, our primary fight with pro-Trump candidates, show up as 45 meets with Representative Jim Banks on Thursday to map out a strategy for retaking the House. We believe we take back the majority by focusing on the 45 agenda, and 45's plan plays a big role in that. He's obviously planning to go out and hit the road and campaign for candidates who share our vision, and we're excited to talk to him about that, Representative Banks stated in the meeting. Many American First Republicans may have a strong chance of winning their general election in November if they beat those who impeached 45, since vulnerable Democrats are unwilling to mention the former president and his agenda, according to the report. The former prez is now a private citizen, and it appears our justice system is handling whatever potential misdeeds he may or may not have committed, says Representative Stephanie Murphy, Democrat, who faces a difficult re-election battle due to redistricting measures in her state. Oh, boo-hoo. Representative Madeline Dean, Democrat, said she is focused on substantive issues, not just retribution for a failed corrupt president. I've never been obsessed with going after 45, she said. Chris Taylor, a spokeswoman for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, emphasized the Democrats' approach. In our campaigns, we're going to tell voters what we've accomplished and what we're fighting for, he said. Yeah. Like socialism and all-out communism. Moving on to the next story. Biden gets touchy-feely after he lands in Geneva for his meeting with Vladimir Putin, where no one is wearing a mask and no social distancing. Imagine that. Biden on Tuesday arrived in Geneva, Switzerland for his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Biden just spent a couple days in Brussels for a NATO summit where he completely embarrassed himself on the onstage world. Biden can barely string together a sentence, so he opted out of doing a joint presser with Putin. Biden's first meeting with Putin on Wednesday will contain 4 participants and translators for each side. Biden, Putin, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. No one was wearing a mask and no one was social distancing when Biden landed in Geneva. Masks are for the peasants. Biden took advantage and got touchy-feely as soon as he deplaned. All right, let's take a look at this. Oh, this guy just can't stand it, can he? He thinks he's John Travolta or something. Huge. Revolver news break report on likely deep state plans inside January 6th uprising. Was it all planned? BLM Antifa mobs have caused over $1 billion in damages in cities across America since May. In Minneapolis alone, BLM mobs damaged or destroyed over 1,500 businesses or buildings. Over 700 police officials or officers were injured in the BLM riots, and that was back in June. BLM was linked to conservatively 91% of the riots that resulted in the most expensive property damage in U.S. insurance history. Democrats incited the BLM matter mobs for months as they destroyed communities across the country. Throughout 2020, there were 0 Trump rallies that turned into violent riots and 0 damages. There's likely a reason for that. Whoever saw a group of Black Bloc Trump supporters led a violent break-in of a federal government facility? It never happened. Who were these people? On Tuesday, Revolver News published an important piece on the unindicted co-conspirators in the January 6th attack, who were never charged by the DOJ or the FBI for their part in the violence on the 6th of January, via Revolver News. Of all the questions asked, words spoken, and ink spilled on the so-called Capitol siege on January 6, 2021, none hold the key to the entire event quite like what Senator Amy Klobuchar asked of Christopher Wray. The Democrat from Minnesota asked if the Trump-appointed FBI director, did the federal government infiltrate any of the so-called militia organizations claimed to be responsible for planning and executing the Capitol siege? We at Revolver News have noticed a pattern from our now months-long investigation of 1/6, and in particular with our meticulous study of the charging documents related to those indicted. In many cases, the unindicted co-conspirators appeared to be much more aggressive and egregious participants in a very so-called conspiracy serving on the basis for changing those indicted. The question immediately arises as to why this is the case, and forces us to consider whether certain individuals are being protected from indictment because they were involved in 1/6 as undercover operatives or confidential informants for a federal agency. Here's useful to draw a distinction between 2 distinct categories of participants in the so-called Capitol siege. First category is the group of mostly harmless tourists who walked through already open doors and already removed barricades, and at most were guilty of minor trespassing charges and light property offenses. Second group consists of those who were violent with police officers, broke down barricades, smashed windows, belonged to a militia group, engaged in military style planning prior to the event, discussed transporting heavy weaponry, and so forth. Up until now, the overwhelming, perhaps exclusive, share of counter-establishment reporting on 1/6 has focused on absolving the first group. And this is a valuable thing. The notion that these harmless MAGA moms wandering around the Capitol were domestic terrorists engaged in an insurrection is absurd, and that many of these people are being held in prison without bail under harsh conditions amounts to an unacceptable and outrageous abuse of basic human rights. However, the possibility the federal government had undercover operatives or informants involved in the events of 1/6, from its planning to its execution, compels us to turn our attention to the second category of participants. Revolver News goes into detail on how the violent plotters in the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot were government informants. Then Revolver News shows the parallels between Whitmer kidnappers and the January 6th Oath Keepers who were behind the planning of the operations that day, and who, like the plotters in Michigan, paid for the hotel rooms and bus rentals to the U.S. Capitol on the 6th of January. Several apparent government informants were not charged in January 6th protests. Isn't that interesting? Yes, it is. Last but not least, Trump is an extraordinary, talented, colorful individual. Biden is radically different. Russian President Putin, when asked about Biden. Russian President Putin was interviewed by NBC on June 11th in Russia. When asked about Joe Biden, Putin responds with compliments of 45, then claims Biden is radically different. When asked the NBC reporter in a recent interview on June 11th from Russia about Biden, Putin responds that 45 I don't know. It's 45 is and at any rate, here is the full exchange with Putin on Biden. Biden, this will not be the Helsinki summit. Biden is not Trump. You once described 45 as a bright person, talented. How would you describe Biden? Vladimir Putin. Well, even now, I believe that the former U.S. President, 45, an extraordinary individual, talented individual. Otherwise, he would not have become U.S. President. He's a colorful individual, and you may like him or not. But he didn't come from the U.S. establishment. He had not been part of big-time politics before, and some like it, some don't like it. But that is the fact. Biden, of course, is radically different from Trump because Biden is a career man. He has spent virtually his entire adulthood in politics. He has been doing it for a great deal of years, and I've already said that, and that is an obvious fact. Just think of the number of years he spent in the Senate, and how many years he was involved in the matters of international politics and disarmament, virtually at the expert level. That's a different kind of person, and it's my great hope that, yes, there are some advantages, some disadvantages, but there will not be any knee-jerk reactions on behalf of the sitting president, that we will be able to comply with certain rules of engagement, certain rules of communications, and we'll be able to find points of contact and common points. Interesting, interesting. Well, that's the first story of this afternoon. I hope you enjoyed them. This is Don V with Truth Be Told, and we are out of here.